One more thing to take notice of is when it's south to north, say, like an extended magnet, the rotation of the box itself, it's not much in the middle, but it lifts on the north side and it lifts on the south side because they're rotating in the same direction. And that makes sense. Twist's different, but it lifts. The whole thing lifts or pushes down, equally. And that's not what I want to show you. The main thing is that both souths always twist the box to the left. The north twists it to the right, the north twists it to the right, the south will twist it to the left, because see, we're right here. So it's going to the left with south on each end. Let this come back on. So that always twists it to the left. The whole bar twists it to the left. So not only do we have this rotation going on, we've got that side to side as it does this way, see, endways. Endways to the left, sideways to the left. And the reason I know that, because the north endways to the right, and when I go north to north on the bar, it twists to the right along it. And then you still got your rotational values, they're opposing each other, so it's down and up depending on rotation this way or rotation that way. They're opposite. So that's why that does that with the direction of the box moving, and the reason it twists the way it twists. Even though it's held in a twist through the middle, it just raises and lowers. And another thing I noticed with these particular magnets in particular, if you can see, wait till it comes back on, when I put the end of a north or a south, right in the middle, do you see the little vortexes, all the little colors, kind of distorted out here and in the middle? When I get right up to it, it turns into a dark circle, and inside of it is like a miniature picture of what we're seeing outside. I mean, it narrows in. I can see the word input inside the circle that it shows. And I may have to hold the camera to show you that. There's a little circle inside that dark circle, and it's only there so close. When I come back, it disappears. It pops out, see? And the south does the same thing. It just rotates everything in the other opposite direction. I think it's twisting it so fast here and so hard that the colors don't get through. I'm going to go ahead and real quick do this holding the camera. It's going to be a little shaky because I'm going to be moving while I hold it. I wanted to show you that end thing from the view up here. When it comes in, see how it makes that circle? And you see in there, you can see the words kind of moving around. There's the input. It's inside that circle. It just kills everything all the way around the magnet. It just, bam. And there's a little circle in the center, if you see it. I guess I could turn kind of this way. And you can see the word input in there. I see it out here, and it just focuses it into the center. So it's vortexing all that and shrinking it down to the center of the magnets, what it shows, because I can read almost the whole word input inside that little circle. If I get it just, over the word. See the word input? It's there. When it shrinks it down, I can almost see the whole word inside. Anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. The only difference they do is one rotates it one way and one the other, but the circle turns it black, and then you can see what's inside is shrunk down to a very small dot. It's a real little bitty dot when I'm real close, but I can come back enough to see part of the word. Anyway, that's pretty wild how that just seems to rotate it. If you watch, all them little circles, they just get more and more and more, and then it turns black. Maybe it's because the TV screen, but it's like this is just overpowering the bombardment of electrons or whatever, and it's just a black hole. I'm going to put the viewing paper on here. You can't really see it from this angle, so I'm going to hold the camera for the south to north and south to south with the viewing paper, because it just won't work with, I have the camera this far away where you can see that much of the bar. And we'll do those two. Like I said, I'm going to hold the camera so you can see it. You see the white line there? That's the pole between the tape and the end of the magnet, that white flare looking thing. Then I go along, and this is south to north. You still see some motion, and there it dies. That's the middle of this long bar. Then it picks it up again on the south side, and then there's your, between the poles, that white flash. They went south, dead, then north, and then your spot. So, you know, it's south to north. Now we'll do south to south. Okay, now we're south to south, as you can see, blue tape to blue tape. If I put it on there, there's our line between the poles. If you watch the bar, it's got black all along. It doesn't lose any. And then back to our white line between the poles. But it stays, it has a magnetic field. It shows it all along it. All along. I mean, it's hard to see it like you do, you know, on a regular magnet, but with that bar there, it's there. It's just kind of hard to see it. Let me turn a little bit. It's there. It just never goes away. It's always showing little fringes all the way around if you see them, both sides of the bar on the paper. So that's what it does under viewing film. Now we're going to move on to electric current, and I'm going to use a smaller bar, and I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, before I do the electric experiment with the bar between the two cylinder magnets, I'm going to go back to my cooked sphere magnet here, one of them, and remind you that I'm running DC. The red is the positive, the black is the negative, so it's going left to right. Because if I run AC, it just goes back and forth. And what happens is, where the current's coming into the magnetic field, it always disperses, you know, gets kind of splattered out. And then where it comes out, it's usually just a fine filament of current going out. But as to coming in, it has trouble. It seems to disperse, if you will, as it rotates. But I wanted to remind you what it looks like when it does that to a magnet itself. Then we move on to the bar between the magnets, what it does. So here we'll do this. And so if you notice, the incoming, the positive in, and it doesn't matter whether it's north or south, is always dispersed around. It has difficulty getting in. But the negative coming out is always a smooth, and it rotates too, but it's a smoother filament of electric current. Just a minute, a little trouble. And like I said, it doesn't matter which pole is to positive or negative, it does the same thing. The positive side will be the one that has difficulty. Okay, so I guess we've established that. And just for the sake of it, I'm going to put the equatorial plane with the thing, and it'll just, it's basically the same thing, but there's a little more disruption on the negative side when you do it this way, but not, it's still the same thing. This is always smoother. The negative outgoing is always smoother than the input. So now we'll move on to the rod, and I'll show you what it does. Okay, to start here, I've got north on that end, if you see. North towards the bar, and this one's south towards the bar, so it's like one long magnet. Okay, and I've got to use this rubber padding on the magnet bar so I can move it. So I'll start it in the middle, and you'll see there's really no dispersion of the positive. It's just going through the bar, if you see that. But as I pull it back and get closer, I get a little bit, but not much. So it really don't work with this bar, even though it's magnetized on the ends, but not in the middle. With it being a long magnet, even up towards the end, with it being south to north, I really don't get a lot of dispersion. And I'm doing this because I'm going to show you with the shorter bar here in just a moment. Now I'm south to south, okay? Get my And we'll try this. Same thing. Not much difference, even though it's magnetized all along its length. It really doesn't do much on this large bar. However, if I change to this shorter half-inch bar, this is the half-inch bar, and it's much shorter. It's only like 4 inches long. And I'm north to south, like one magnet with a dead spot in the middle. I'll show you again. Let me get my electrode set a little better. There's nothing there, but if I move it back towards the end of one side, I get a lot of sporadic on the positive. Let me move it forward a little. More sporadic on the positive towards the magnet. And it's causing the negative to do so too, but the positive is way more out of whack, if you will. And like I said, this is north to south. It's just a longer bar with a dead spot in the middle. And a little bit there. And I can turn it around and get the south a little bit better on that side. Bit of tape. There it goes. That was a little too close to the magnet. Now the south, closer to the magnet, is a little more dispersed, and that's with it north to south, with a dead spot in the middle where the current just goes through the bar. However, when I turn this short bar south to south, okay, I'm south to south now, all the way along the bar, it has a little disruption. If you see that, all along the bar, it has disruption now. Turn it this way. And, you know, the surprising part is, not surprising, but right in the middle, it still has the disruption on the south side. So like the TV screen showed and like the viewing film showed, it has got a magnetic field all along it, even though one's rotating one way and one's rotating the other way. It's still, if you know, you can see by the positive coming in is disrupted all along it, with it south to south, does the same thing north to north. But when it's one long magnet in the middle, there's no disruption, no magnetization. So that tells me that, you know, when you've got south to north and it's one magnet, they're feeding into themselves. They're going in opposite directions. These two are rotating in opposite directions, but they're still feeding towards themselves from the middle out. But they're connected because they're rotating in opposite directions, and they're conflicted, you know, proportionately less towards each magnet that the other one's conflicting the other one. Proportionately less towards this magnet, this one's affecting that one, and proportionately less towards this magnet, this one's affecting that one. But it shows that it does have effect right in the middle. As opposed to, let me change this now. With it north to south, there is no disruption. That tells me that these two, you know, north and south, are feeding towards each other, and they're rotating in the same direction though, so that's why there's no disruption. And they are proportionately canceling each other out in the middle as one rotates the same direction as the other one away from each other. That's why it's calm in the middle. But when I flip the magnet and they're both rotating in opposite directions, you have conflict all along, but I think it's proportionate where they, you know, lessen each other's conflict and become their own as it goes here. That's why you have that conflict in the middle, is because they're rotating in opposite directions, even though they're feeding in towards themselves. They have a rougher time separating, even though that's when it's south to south. They have a rougher time separating the opposite rotation. When they're the same rotation, it's not that hard to separate because they're both rotating in the same direction. So anyway, I think that is my idea why it does what it does. That's the end of this part.